Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the podcast series Careers in Science, where we spotlight the many opportunities that could await you should you decide to pursue a STEM-based education. My name is Sean Hughes, chemistry teacher at John Abbott College, and reflecting back on my own experience in school, I always had an interest in science, but apart from the usual suspect jobs of a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, I really wasn't sure what I could do with a science education. And so I hope that this series brings you insight into the wonderful opportunities that await you should you elect to pursue science and put a focus on jobs that you may not have ever thought of. Also, as part of the podcast, we also talk at length with our guests about their life paths, what resulted in them getting to where they are today, and some of the trials and successes along their career. So my guest today is a good friend of mine, Tony Sabetti. Tony is a molecular biologist by training, having completed his bachelor's and master's at Concordia University. But rather than pursue a career in the lab, some chance opportunities brought him into the world of sales. And clearly, he's been pretty successful at it. He is the sales manager at Thermo Fisher Scientific. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for having me on the call.
So let's just jump into it here, Tony. Oftentimes when I speak to guests, we talk a little bit about school and their educational path. Was science always sort of at the forefront of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think I was always interested in science as a child, looking at bones and anatomy, and it was always something that intrigued me. After going into college, I started enjoying biology a lot more. So, it was always a path that I wanted to take. Obviously, my parents helped and, wanted me to go into science. So, yeah, I chose that path.
It's funny because your experience mirrors my own. My mom was an X-ray technician. And that's exactly what kind of got me into science, was just looking at the bones, man. It was just, it was awesome. I remember sitting in, it was like high school or even elementary school ped days. I basically spent my days at the Children's Hospital watching people look at X-rays and people tell me, hey, you see that? That's a break right there in this guy's tibia. Or when my mom moved into MRI, that definitely cemented it for me. Like, oh my God, I got to go into science, because I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I see that also now with my kids who have puzzles. My son has a puzzle of the bones on one side and all the organs on the other side. And I got to say, he does it probably 3 times a day, just taking it apart and putting it together. So it's pretty funny to see how we influence our kids as well.
Funny you mention that too. You have young kids, I have young kids. Do you find yourself kind of going back when you do this kind of stuff with the kids? Like, I have like these under the sea puzzles, these dinosaur puzzles, and it just takes me right back to that where I first started to get really into science.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Sean. We do that with our kids, and yeah, it brings me back to when I was a kid, learning about this stuff as well.
So you mentioned college as sort of being the platform for when you started to really enjoy biology. Why biology? Why not the physics, the chemistry, the math? What was it about biology that really sucked you in?
Yeah, I think it was more about, learning how things work, learning about the different organs. Really, that was what really I enjoyed. Physics, math, I liked it, but it didn't really, tickle me, let's say. It didn't it didn't really make me want to, learn more about it, but biology did.
After CEGEP, you end up in university, you start pursuing molecular biology. What was it maybe most about what you were learning there that really sort of cemented for you, okay, this is the place I want to be?
Yeah, I think it was very, the different types of lab courses that come with the molecular biology stream. I enjoyed being in the lab. I enjoyed learning about new things. Everyone does either the frog back in the day or the pig. And dissecting it. I don't think you do that nowadays anymore, but I think that's where it really cemented that, hey, this is what I want to continue to do and learn. And that's what I did.
I remember the smell when we did dissections. Oh, Lord, help me, man.
The smell it didn't bother me so much. But yeah, I remember some people really being bothered by the smell. But
I remember, in spite of the smell, I did enjoy that sort of stuff when we were dissecting and peeling back the layers and looking at how things function. And I think that's what drew me to biology too.
Yeah, it's really how everything functions together, right? Learning about the lungs and, the different organs, tissues, how things transverse through the cells. It all piqued my interest and I wanted to learn more. So, yeah.
Did you have any influences along the way, like people that sort of encouraged you to pursue science, or that maybe they were a
Yeah.
role model?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think my parents, like many parents, even nowadays, they all want your kids to be doctors or, some kind of medical degree.
Hasn't
Uh,
changed, man. It hasn't
yeah,
changed.
that's what I figure. No, my parents pushed me. I think being a doctor wasn't really where I wanted to go, but science was where, I was what I was interested in. And my parents did push me, not just to, push me in science, but also push me in, just do what you want to do, right? And what you want to learn. My parents are first generation, they came over from Italy, spoke very little of English or French. And for me, it was a lot on myself, right? They told me they would push me, but I needed to learn on my own. That to me was okay. If I need to learn on my own, I got to learn what I like, right? And what I enjoy, learning. So I picked science. I think there was a one point in my life, a crossroad between computer science or biology, and I went the biology route, and I think I did pick the right route for me.
Did your educational path go as planned? Like, did you kind of have it mapped out? I mean, you talk about this crossroads here. So obviously there was a bit of indecision, but would you say, you just kind of jumped through the hoops as necessary?
I would say yes. Overall, my path was kind of what I wanted it to be for myself. I knew I wasn't at any rush to complete any of my courses, like some of my other friends who, wanted to get in and get out as fast as possible, get into the workforce. So I took my time. It took me a little longer to, finish my bachelor's degree, which, I was fine with. Once I finished my bachelor's degree, I thought that was it, and I was gonna, start working, which I did. I got a great opportunity to work at the Jewish General Hospital in the lab as a research assistant. So I jumped on that and did that for a little while. So that kind of helped me. Once I was there for a couple of years and really saw what a technician and lab assistant does, I decided to go back to school and do my master's degree. I saw that there was a value in that. It was probably the best thing I did because it did open a lot of doors for me after. In the end, was it exactly what most people do? No, but it was the path that was right. And in the end, I've completed my master's degree, and like I mentioned, it did open a lot of doors.
I want to touch upon two things that you mentioned here. One is the idea of time. And I often find that students coming straight out of high school or that are going through CEGEP, oftentimes they put a lot of pressure on themselves to complete things as everybody else does. That if the program is 2 years, I have to get out in 2 years, or it's going to ruin my life. If I have to go do my bachelor's, I have to do it in 3 years if it's a 3-year program, or it's going to ruin my life. And it's something that's so far from the truth, especially nowadays where I think a lot of people are sort of navigating things at their own pace, and people are more cognizant of how that can be an advantage. You have to do what works for you. And so I applaud that you made a conscious decision to just sort of, you know what, I'm going to take it slow. And it clearly worked out for you, right?
Yeah, it did. I mean, COVID is the perfect example, right? Right now, a typical class probably takes a lot longer during the COVID
So
times than
true.
right. And some students appreciate that. Taking more time to learn something properly, or not overwhelming yourself. Yeah, I mean, key is to enjoy what you're doing, right? And at a pace that it's comfortable for you.
The other thing I want to touch upon, Tony, is something you mentioned. So you started off in the workforce right after your bachelor's, working as a technician at the Jewish General Hospital, and then you sort of platformed into your master's and said there was much more to gain from that experience. Could you just elaborate a bit more on what might be the difference for somebody who is going to join the workforce with only a bachelor's degree in a science domain versus if they have a master's degree?
With a bachelor's degree, you might be a little bit more limited. When I finished my master's degree, biotech, I guess the doors of the biotech industry opened as well for me. And not to say that someone with a bachelor's degree can't get a job, but it did open a lot more doors for me. When I was applying, that was one of the criteria that they were looking for. One of the companies I worked for, called Warnex, their criteria was master's degree, or, something like 5 years of experience working in a lab. And obviously I had my master's degree, so I was one of the key candidates, and, I got the job. I did that for a couple of years. Yeah, the master's degree does help. Obviously then you can go to the next level as PhD, depending what kind of job you want. I thought a PhD wouldn't give me any benefit. So that's why I stopped at the master's degree.
So after you completed your master's degree, Tony, what was next?
When I was finishing my master's degree, I started applying, and I got that job at Warnex. Warnex was a great experience for me because I was, continuing my lab work. Working for a corporation is much different than working in a hospital for research. So I learned a lot about, the different sides of the business and the different sides of science. We developed kits for, pathogen detection, which I enjoyed, but still I was, a lab technician doing the work. We got an opportunity. We had some investors come in from Italy, and, having a background of being Italian, they asked me to go and, mingle with the investors, just to make sure that everyone was fine. And that's when I realized that, maybe the lab wasn't the end all for me. Discussing with different people and, talking with these investors, I saw that there was a different side that I could be in, which then, really piqued my interest. And that's what eventually I said to myself, hey, I want to go into sales.
So was it that in talking with these investors, they were showing you business side of things as opposed to the laboratory side of things? What was it that kind of got you hooked into this other aspect of the industry?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, there was the business side that somewhat intrigued me, but it was more of the interaction with the different people. Having that social aspect of it, I think brought on a new, light, I'm going to say. In a lab, you're always with the same people, you're interacting, but, you're always with a group of the same people. In sales, it's more of a, social event, I'm going to say. And that's what piqued my interest. And from that point, I think I put the wheels in motion, start looking for sales positions. That led me to, my next position at Montreal Biotech, which was more of I'm going to say a specialist. There was some sales involved, but more of doing demos and showcasing equipment, which called on my science background and made me learn about, what is involved in selling, anything, any piece of equipment or product or whatnot. So that really gave me the first step in sales, and actually, to see if I was good at it, because when you try something new, you really don't know if you're good at it or not, or if you're going to like it. That was my stint at Montreal Biotech, really learning about the industry, sales, and what it entails.
So you don't have any formal education in sales at this point, right? When you're taking on this job.
Correct.
So what kind of skill set did you have to draw upon to be effective in this new role? Which I imagine is daunting, because you kind of work in a lab, you're used to sort of the science of it all, and all of a sudden now you've got to pitch to other scientists that this product is going to be useful for whatever it is they're doing in their lab.
Yeah, I can tell you, jumping forward, when I look to hire people now, I don't look for sales experience per se. Having a science background in a science sales position is much better than having a sales background. What I learned really quickly is that, scientists like to talk science. Obviously, I had the science background. When people know that you understand science, they tend to gravitate towards you more and, purchase your products. So that's something I learned very quickly, and leveraged, obviously. So, sales is, I'm not going to say it's easy, because it's not, but sales is something that you can learn. I think having the science background is key in this industry for us.
You bring up an excellent point, and it's something I talk about with my students all the time, is that, why is it in SAGEP you have to do, this wide spectrum of disciplines, right? The biology, the chemistry, the physics, and the math. And part of it is that, yeah, you're going to be a well-rounded student and get exposed to different things, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also that you have to learn to walk the walk and talk the talk, because when you're working in a STEM field, you got to be competent in what it is you're doing, right? You have to be able to talk the language and express yourself in an appropriate way. And I remember, when I was in the lab as a student, we'd get some guys come to try to sell us some products. And you'd look at them and say, you don't know, you haven't done your due diligence. You have no clue what it is I'm doing in the lab and how your product is either maybe appropriate and I could see it, but you're just not selling it, or how your product is inappropriate for what I do and you're wasting my time. And scientists can be very judgmental that way too. So I see where that could be a challenge to be in sales, especially if you don't understand the product that you're pitching.
Correct. Yeah. And, just to add to that, I mean, math is important because even though you're in science, you still got to do calculations in sales, right? You got to do conversions. So you need to understand the basics of math, right? And hence why in college you do all the disciplines. Chemistry, I mean, fundamental to all science, right? You need to understand chemistry because so much is based on chemical reactions and whatnot, even when you're in biology. And that, funnels into sales as well, because when you're talking to customers, they're trying to devise some kind of chemical reaction, and if you understand it from the get-go, you're able to, talk and seem competent on the product, right? So yeah, it's important to cover all the disciplines.
What makes your job interesting? I mean, so obviously you talk about working with others and the people, you've stuck in this for years now. What is it that keeps you in this business?
Yeah, so I'm going to say at first, when I was a sales rep, it was, the success, being able to convince someone that your product is better over a different product. That was my main drive. Over the years, obviously it's changed. I now manage a team of 8 people across Canada, and it's very different. Yes, the drive is still there. I want to have success, but now it's how do I teach this, team of 8 how to be successful as well. The satisfaction comes from watching them grow year over year, learning, how to be better from the previous year. Not far from, being a teacher, to be honest, because it is. I've had success when I was a sales rep, and now is training and showing my students how to be successful as well. Being open-minded, creating ideas. That really is what gives me the satisfaction nowadays, much more than just the selling.
Certainly, when I saw you sort of start in this field, you were on the road a lot. What was interesting or fun about being on the road? You got any interesting stories or anecdotes to share?
Yeah, so I mean, interesting. Yeah, I traveled a lot. I still do travel quite a bit. Unfortunately, not because of not now, but from the pandemic. You get to see some great places. I think in Canada, if you ever get a chance to go to Kelowna, a beautiful place to visit. And having gone to Kelowna for business, it was quite spectacular. But yeah, no, it's you get to go areas that you never think you would be able to go just as a regular individual. So I mean, that's the cool aspect. The other advantage is you have some great sales meetings. As a corporation, and usually they're in February and somewhere warm. So it kind of cuts the winter, I'm gonna say. Our last meeting was in February, right before COVID hit in Orlando.
A super spreader.
You know what? It was a super spreader maybe in February, but and it's a global meeting. So COVID was around well before in Europe, but no one came out of it with COVID. So go figure. But yeah, no, traveling is it has its pros and cons, right? The pros, you get to see a lot of cool places. Sometimes you get to travel as a family when you can, but you're also away from your family a lot, which can be very hard. So yeah, it's a balance. There's pros and cons.
So who would be suitable for a job doing sales in a science field?
That's always a tough question.
Someone who could sell.
No. Well, it depends, right? I think, someone who's very open, not scared to try new things. Person needs to be a team player because, even though you're alone in your own geographical territory, you do have a team to leverage. So you'll always want to, try to bounce ideas off of other people. So a team player is, key. You need to work independently, and you need to be disciplined. There's no one watching you, 9 to 5, right? So that's something that is very very key, and you need to be flexible. That's one thing I learned last year during the pandemic. When you start having government officials calling you on Sunday afternoon, you need to be ready to pick up the phone, right? It's not something that you can say, well, this is my time off, I'm not on the job. So you do need to be flexible in sales. Customers always come first. So yeah, you need to sometimes put your personal life aside and help the people, that you're trying to sell to. And I think that goes a long way.
So is there anything you're particularly proud of over your career in this domain?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things I'm proud of. One, it's my team, right? Growing my team. We used to be 6 in Canada. Now we're 8. So that was a key aspect for me and a milestone. Making sure everyone is successful, which we've gotten there. Last year during the pandemic, I have to say that was one of the most satisfying years I've had as a sales rep, because as a company, Thermo Fisher was key in supporting most of the testing worldwide, and to have that opportunity to make a difference really really put value on what we do. Helping all the labs, all the hospitals, providing all the test kits, really showed us that, hey, we're here to make a difference in the world. The company model is, cleaner, safer, a better world. And last year, I think we really, showed that we're here to help, and that's what we did.
I usually like to cap this off with asking my guests this question. Do you have advice for young people who are sort of navigating their own career path? They're trying to find their way, figure out what it is they want to do. They could be SAGEP students, they could be people in university right now that, they might be second guessing themselves. What advice do you have for them as they navigate their educational and ultimately their career path?
Find something that you like to do. Don't be scared to try different things. Do your research. A lot of people have preconceived notions about what a particular job is. Do your research about what that job is, whether it be a scientist, whether it be a teacher or a university professor. Just do your research of what it entails. Maybe if I think our world is very different. Once COVID is behind us, shadow someone. I think that's the best way to see what the life of a sales rep or the life of a professor is. Shadow someone and see if that's what you want to do and that's what you like. You'll get to see the good and the bad, because with every job there's positives and then there's struggles. Nothing's easy in this world. So yeah, that would be my advice. Just try different things, do your research, and then pick something that you think you're gonna like long term, because you're invested in this. The companies are invested then in you, and you got to be happy for the better part of your life while you're working. So that would be my advice.
Tony, I think that's some excellent advice. I want to thank you again for taking some time out of your week to sit down and talk to me. I think you gave some very interesting insights into the world of sales and how even with a science background, you could find yourself in a business world and yet still find some measure of satisfaction doing something that still was what you intended to do, right? Which is working in science, just in a different realm and in a different avenue. So thank you for sharing your story, and hope to catch up with you again soon, bud.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me.
And so concludes this latest episode of the podcast series Careers in Science. I've been your host, Sean Hughes. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to the channel. Take care, and bye for now.